Hi guys, welcome back to the Improvement Season podcast. It's me, as always, Steve Hall. On the other end, Pascal Floor. What's the beverage, Pascal? That looks like orange. No, sorry. It looks like apple juice. I don't think it is, though.
No. Oh, man, I'm
You're
always forgetting about it. Have you Schweppes, Steve?
Schweppes, yeah.
Yeah, this is Schweppes, I think, bitter lemon, No, ginger ale, exactly. Schweppes Ginger Ale Zero is actually pretty good. And it's expensive, though.
Nice.
But Katie was like, so on the weekend we had a kebab. And kebab is quite salty. And in the evening we were just like, man, I'm craving something bubbly that is also sweet at the same time. So Katie actually took off to the supermarket and bought a 6-pack of Coke Zero for her without caffeine. And she wanted to do me a favor. That's why she got me the Schweppes Ginger Ale Zero.
There is something about having something very salty, but then having like a sweet beverage alongside it. That's really good. Actually, this reminds me. So you did a kebab. Me and Charlotte, like I've mentioned before, every Friday we do a takeaway pretty much. We had McDonald's this Friday.
Oh, really?
And yeah, this past
Friday.
Friday.
How is it nowadays, Steve? Because I didn't have any kind of McDonald's in 20 years.
Yeah.
If not even longer.
I don't think it would be something I would have unless like Charlotte was interested to have it. But I was impressed. Like, it wasn't super greasy. The packaging was really good. Everything was recyclable. It came really nicely. It was warm. Like, it was very well done. As in, like, they've nailed takeaway for me. Whereas I know some, because there's some, like, I don't know, standalone companies or like branches of restaurants where we've had stuff and it's like in Tupperware and it's leaking everywhere and it's complete shit. I'm just like, this is terrible. It's all mixed together and congealed. Whereas they've like, I don't know, the burger comes very nicely. I got, what was it? A McPlant, basically a vegan burger. I got large chips and a large chocolate milkshake, which I haven't had in like over a decade. I have not had a chocolate milkshake from there. And I was just like, I've been wanting to try this for ages. I actually looked at the macros. I was like, it's actually not that bad considering the carbs I'm on. It's quite high carb. And I had it and I was like, I'm not that impressed by this. But it was that sweet and salty of like chips with the milkshake, which was quite enjoyable. But I said to Charlotte, I was like, I reckon I could make a protein shake that was like a quarter of the calories as good as this like chocolate milkshake. She was like, no way. I was like, no, you could.
Milkshakes can be quite nice, to be honest.
Yeah, it was all right. It was decent. And I think milkshakes, the ones that are like really, what's the word I'm looking for? Decadent? I don't know what I'm looking for. Delicious, let's just say that. I think they're very high in calories, like lots of fat, lots of like real tons of sugar. Whereas this, like, I don't know, it wasn't, I don't know what the calories were, like 300 or something for a large milkshake. Whereas I'm looking at the ones that are like 600 to 1,000 for like a milkshake. But anyway, that was me saying sweet and salty.
No, absolutely. And I always have it when I had like sushi. And then either on the same day in the evening, if we had like sushi during the day, or next day. I'm kind of, but most of the time on the same evening, like right before bedtime, I'm craving something like, once again, cold, bubbly, that is sweet.
I definitely get that. I'm trying to think what I tend to like. My favorite at the moment is Fanta. It's Fanta Zero is really good. Really? But similar to you, it's the caffeine. People don't often think about the caffeine content within things because my like favorite beverage, sugar-free Pepsi, like that wins for me in like sodas. Or fizzy drinks, whatever, fizzy pop. But it's got caffeine in it and quite a bit. And so unless I have it early in the day, I'm like, I'm not going to have it after. I'm not going to have that later in the day because I just know it's a bad idea for me sleep-wise. So it's kind of annoying.
Yeah, Katie just got it. I don't know. So in Germany, it's actually very, very hard to get your hands on zero drinks. It has gotten better over the past years. Yeah. Like, for example, the supermarket right next to our door, you can't get any unless they have it as a special edition in their offering for the week.
Oh, wow.
So it's crazy. And even kind of supermarkets that are just dedicated for drinks often have a very limited amount of beverages that come at 0 calories, which is awful in my opinion. Anyway, that's besides the point. What I wanted to say is the Coke now is available caffeine-free as a 0 version. In the past, you only could get it as a, what is it called again? A light version. light and then caffeine free, which does taste different. I mean, light does taste different. I still remember the times when I was very, very young and my parents had a restaurant. That was the time, and this is how old I am. There wasn't any kind of Coke Zero around. It was only Coke and Coke Light. These were kind of the only ones that you can get. And I know that back then the taste was quite different.
And light is the same as diet, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But yeah, I think we've spoken about it before with caffeine and how it, like decaf coffee, like I'm always like, it just doesn't taste like caffeinated coffee. And we're like, does it actually ever taste, or is it all psychological in your head? But actually what I will say is very rare to find it, but Pepsi Max have a caffeine-free version. And that one is the best of like Coke Pepsi variants I've had. Mm-hmm. It still doesn't taste as good, but it's close. It's the closest to that.
Yeah, and once again, also there, Katie has now that zero version of Coke at home. And in the evening, if you just want to have something like this and fancy that kind of taste,
yeah,
it is more than sufficient. You don't need to have an orgasm when you're drinking something like this, where it's like, oh no, this is
for sure.
Caffeine free and zero. Doesn't really come in my mouth. But also, I don't get it why you want to drink calories unless you are a Steve Hall that needs to consume like 4,000 calories. For me personally, it is kind of my kryptonite when it comes to liquid calories, because they don't really satiate you, and you can really easily stack up calories with liquid calories.
I don't know if Johnny said it to you, but your client Johnny from Propane Fitness, shout out to Johnny and Youssef. He was super surprised when they came into London and they asked to meet up, and we went for a coffee, of which none of us ordered a coffee because it was probably too late for everyone. But he got a water and I got like an orange juice because I was just like, I need the calories, I need the carbs. And he was like, you want an orange juice? He was like, I'm going to tell Pascal on you. Like, you can't be having an orange juice.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, man, I can, because of the carbs and calories I'm on. So yeah, I mean, and that would have been like a sin on my behalf. Like I had so many like leaner living habits built into my system, like back 10 years ago, where I would say I didn't like certain foods just so that I wouldn't have them and find that actually no, they're super delicious. I just don't want to eat them because I know they're calorie dense.
And I think that there's a kind of a tiered approach to it. If you want to categorize it, if you are below a certain caloric intake, then you may be in tier number 4. And tier number 4 allows for certain meals and certain drinks. When you're then in tier number 3, for example, 1,500 to 2,000 calories, you can allow for XYZ more easily. And once you are then in tier number, let's say 1, where it's kind of 4,000 calories above, then you needed to include things like these, because otherwise it's just getting unfeasible.
Yeah, for sure. And actually that brings me circles back a little bit to the McDonald's, and part of why like that's quite easy for me to do is because at the moment, and we may talk about it when Cliff comes on, but he's got me on like refeed days. I don't know if I think he called them, no, he did refeed days during my mass. So during the week I'm on, I don't know what it's like, 3,800 to 3,900 calories it roughly comes out to macro wise. And then on those refeed days, it's like 4,300 or something calories.
How's that for you? Because the past, you've always been struggling once you've pushed it a little bit more aggressively. Yeah. But on a consistent basis, you've been actually dealing with a little bit of nausea. But now with refeed days maybe in a gaining phase, is that...
So at the moment, I think the nausea and those associated symptoms are body weight related versus calorie intake related. So I'm still, I think, under that threshold where my body is really kicking up a fuss. I'm getting kind of close in the mornings. I still don't have a great appetite, which I do a like 1,000 calorie smoothie type of thing to get the calories in early. Because if I miss that, then it makes it really hard to get calories in later. But my appetite, like yesterday evening, I was hungry. I was like, ooh, it's been quite novel being hungry during the week when my calories are a little bit lower. And then it's actually easy on those higher calorie days because normally I go out for a meal with Charlotte, or I have the takeaway, which just adds like 1,000, 1,500 calories of just like easy calories to kind of get in. So yeah, I wouldn't say it's been like better, but it's been different. And I mean, I will be interested if I can breach the body weight plateau, the body weight ceiling that I tend to hit where nausea kicks in. I don't know though that Cliff even wants my body weight to go up that high, because he hasn't told me what range he wants my weight to be kept in, but he was like, I want your weight to be kept in quite a tight range, which makes sense because that's what I was thinking. If I'm not going to do a mini cut, kind of pre-prep mini cut, then I don't want to push my body weight very high, because that would just lead to too much to have to lose. So yeah, it's been, I thought I might struggle with 4,000, like 300 calories, whatever, but it's been fine. Again, given the context of eating out on those days, it does make it a little bit easier, but it's been, again, novel to have a little bit of hunger during the week. And yeah, maybe that is a lesson for future, that just actually planning it that way. Because for me, I would just always keep my calories level every day. I was happy to have more or less on the given days and hit a calorie average. I just never did it. I just always just fell in the same. And so I just like, hey, meal 3, I'll just make that lower calorie, and then my meal 4, which might be a meal out, will just be slightly higher than it normally would be, and cool. So it's the phrase I keep coming back to, many ways to skin a cat. Although I think I need to use now many ways to layer a cake. That's a new one.
Because it's still a gaining one, or what?
No, I mean, because I keep saying on the podcast, either many roads to Rome or many ways to skin a cat. And I'm like, I need a new one. And shout out to Martin Refalo. He said, many ways to layer a cake can be another one. I'm not as aware of that one. I haven't Googled it to make sure it's a legit one, but it sounds fine.
Totally sounds plausible, but as we always say, only because it's plausible or sounds plausible doesn't mean that it is plausible. Speaking of plausible, let's go back to McDonald's, because I'm just curious about it, Steve.
You're going to get one now.
No. The reason is, why
you can get salads.
Why it makes me curious is because McDonald's has been obviously around for a very, very long time. And it is kind of a thing where everyone is saying like, ooh, McDonald's, I'm not going to eat there. But still, it has been around for such a long time, and it has grown over the entire globe, and it's still doing all right. Most of the time, companies that are longer around at some point become irrelevant and actually then lose market share, and at some point go bankrupt and are being flushed out of the market for something else or replaced by something else. And even though that everyone is claiming that they are not eating there, they are still doing very well. So I would have to assume that what it is that they are offering is first and foremost actually pretty good. Because if it were to be piss poor and everyone wouldn't like it, then no one would actually then go there and buy something. Because it's also not the cheapest. It's not that
it's cheaper than most takeaways, I would say.
Yeah,
it's on the cheaper
end. It's not cheap in the sense of if you were to go to the supermarket, you would probably get everything cheaper if you were to buy things yourself. And then I have to assume that the quality needs to meet a certain standard, that also the interior is very much clean and tidy, and also the entire service and process is good enough so that it is actually staying around, because it's basically also tying into what it is that we discussed last week. If you're offering a shitty service, people will come to you, do it once and never do it again. But apparently they've been around for such a long time, it must be good enough. At least good enough to satisfy you so that you're then coming back again. And if you are then saying like, hey, actually I was quite surprised in how good it is, and I wasn't there since like, once again, 20, 25, 30 years. I can't really recall. It has been, okay, 30 years is a little bit too long. 20, 25 years, something like this. And they must have also then changed and also made things even better than it was back then.
So I can't really speak to the stores because I haven't been in one for a very long time. I maybe have been in one within the last decade to buy a drink, but I've never actually gone in and bought food at one. Only takeaways, like maybe a handful of takeaways from McDonald's. So I can't speak about the interior particularly well. I don't like any takeaway place. Like I never go in there and eat. Like it's kind of like I'll have a takeaway from McDonald's, but I'm not going to go in there and eat. But I'll eat in a restaurant, if you know what I mean. Yeah. It's not somewhere that I would go to. But in terms of my limited experience on different takeaways, Like they package it up well. It comes like, I think the thing, at least appeals to me about McDonald's is it's very standardized. You know what you're getting and you get it every time, and they nail it every single time. Like McDonald's chips, you know what you're getting. If you get the McPlant, it comes the same way every time. And you can customize things, and I don't know. I'm trying to speak about it. I don't really know much about it, but I think it's just people know it and they trust it, and it delivers on that. And also within takeaways, which, yeah, it's not as cheap as going out to the supermarket and things, but then there's time investment. People like a takeaway, whatever. It's cheaper in terms of takeaways. It's one of the cheaper ones that you can get, but it's still of a standard that people appreciate is good enough.
I just also mean because it has such a bad rap, at least in my circle, that I wonder whether it is justified or something that is just being parroted.
Yeah, I don't
You have a preconception of something, you haven't really eaten there in such a long time, and yeah, maybe it's just a false perception. Maybe it is actually, in comparison to other chains, actually much better. And this is the reason why it is still there and is still kind of nearly the king in comparison to everyone else.
Yeah, the only thing I can think of is, did you ever have Wimpy's?
Never even heard about Wimpy's.
They're probably just a British thing. They just died. Like I can't really think of many chains in the UK apart from like KFC, which I don't think I've ever eaten at, actually.
Neither did I.
Burger King, which I very rarely have ever gone to, and then McDonald's, which as a kid, McDonald's was where we would go as a family. So then that's the only one like I've ended up continuing to sometimes go to.
It wasn't the same for us as well. We only had a McDonald's in our small city. KFC wasn't around. Burger King wasn't there. So I only had the opportunity to go to something like a McDonald's. I still remember where it is, and whether it's still located, I don't know. But they always had kind of this small playground as well for the kids. It was actually great fun as a kid, to be honest. Which brings me also then once again to the other point of like, it is all standardized, and you can pretty much, if you are then eating out and you are concerned with your macronutrient intake, and I would very much assume that you can find some kind of macros online or even there in their store. Maybe they have a list or so.
It's on the menu when you're ordering from Uber Eats.
See, perfect. Because then you can pretty much be certain that it is close to this. Because with those kind of franchises, they have a very, very strict criteria on how much they are allowed to take. And most of the time, it's very much meticulous of like, okay, for example, Subway is also a perfect example.
Yeah.
You need to spread for like, I don't know how many it is, but you need to have like cucumber, for example. You can only take like 6 pieces of cucumber.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's perfect because whenever I'm eating out and I don't know what to get, I get something like a Subway sandwich because I know what it is that I'm getting. And it's not like up for debate. The caloric discrepancy is maybe plus minus, if at all, 50 calories.
Yeah, it's not going to be very much, especially if you get some of the like more basic, like, I don't know, turkey slices and ham, and you don't get any sauce or whatever, but it's within a margin of error that is completely like negligible that you'd have to worry about. But yeah, if you go out, something that sometimes Charlotte wants actually is pasta. She wants to order in pasta, and I'm like, man, like I have done it, but we did it, and I've done it actually only once, and I was just like, this is testing my ability to calculate. Yeah. This is an amount of sauce that I have fucking no idea of how much is on here. So whereas for something like a Subway or like a standardized McDonald's, like not even a worry at all. But for mixed meals, they become more challenging. So we do sometimes Thai green curry, for example. We've done many times. And I have a way of kind of guesstimating that. But it's tough, and I don't use all the sauce because they give you tons, and it's very high in calories because it's got loads of coconut oil or milk in there. And so I'm just like, roughly gauge it, and I do my best, and that's all I can do at that point. But when it comes time to diet, those are some of the kind of inaccuracies that I do not want to afford. But a Subway, especially earlier on within like a prep phase, totally legit. Even later on, to be honest.
Yeah.
Let's see what Cliff says.
To be honest, though, I was always kind of still skeptical about the caloric value because you have this huge slice of bread. And then you have those calories, and it didn't really make a lot of sense in my head. But also, to be fair, that bread is not really dense. You could actually then squeeze it together and have like that small of a bun.
Yeah. It's like airy bread.
Yeah.
For sure. So you have done sushi recently. Is there anything else you've eaten out recently?
Kebab, sushi, ramen. These are the typical things. I mean, if we are ordering, which is very rare, because sushi is way too expensive to actually then have with the entire family. Way too expensive. And the kids, they can't really appreciate it. For them, it's just rice with a little bit of fish, and it's way too expensive then to actually then order it with the entire family. So this is the only thing that we are then having when Katie and I are by ourselves, and most of the time when we're then having a date day outside. Kebab is something that we are then ordering together. It's just there's kind of this a durum. I don't know if it's called that in on English as well. It's kind of like a rolled kind of kebab.
Okay, we do. The one I think you would get is a shish kebab.
Yeah, it could very well be that is this. This is what we are getting for then the kids. We're slicing it up in the middle, and they can share it then because there's plenty for them. And then ramen is also something that Katie and I are basically just having when we are by ourselves. We are very rarely ordering food, to be honest. Most of the time we are doing it ourselves. That's the beauty also about me being at home, because I'm the man in the household.
Do you cook the meals?
Yeah. I cook and prepare the meals. Also, then breakfast. Most of the time, I'm preparing for the others. And now in the week, not so much anymore. Simply because Hugo has to go to school or leave the house for school already now at 7:15, and I'm first coming back from my training session somewhere around like 7:15. But on the weekends, I'm always preparing everything. Sometimes it kind of pisses me off, but sometimes, most of the time, it's all right.
I'm all right doing it so long as I did prepare a dinner for me and Charlotte last night, but it was like 8 p.m. and I was like, I want to eat now. I don't know if she's home yet, so I'm just going to start cooking. Yeah. And thankfully, like half the way through cooking, she was like, oh, I'm just walking back from the underground. I was like, right, it's going to be out and it's going to be a bit cold. Actually, our microwave broke. That's been a bit annoying. It just all of a sudden made a noise that it doesn't normally make, and no longer works. And that was like my primary thing that I use.
And did any kind of creature crawl out of the microwave afterwards? Maybe you opened a portal to a different dimension.
I've never had a microwave break on me, so I didn't know what to expect, but we have had it since we bought it when we were in Clapham. So we've had it like almost 10 years. So
man.
It's been a long time. Yeah. But now I've been using the air fryer for my frozen veg, and it cooks it way quicker, which is just kind of weird.
Yeah, but microwaves can be quite challenging and weird at times, because some ours is as well. So the light doesn't work anymore, so I can't really watch anything through the screen, which is quite annoying when you're making some kind of oats.
Oh yeah, that's a nightmare.
Because you always have to be alert and stand in front of the microwave, open it up, see whether it has already risen to the top or not, close it again, let it run for like 20 seconds, open it up again. It's super annoying. But there, it's kind of the same. Sometimes you have those meals, and it reacts, of course, to liquids. And some places where it's then a little bit more liquid than on other places, it's getting very, very hot, whereas then on other places, it's still staying cold.
Yeah, like I'll cook my frozen veg and some of it will be like overdone and some of it will be frozen. I'm like, God's sake, I should have mixed that. But the air fryer makes all the veg dry. So that's kind of like, I have some peas and they're like shriveled. I'm like, right, I don't really enjoy this anyway. I'm just eating it because I know I need to eat it at this point.
When is no, it's something that you and Cliff are going to discuss. I just wanted to ask when the initial cutting phase is going to start, but I save it up until you guys are on the podcast. I think that
it's a question I need to ask. I don't know.
Yeah, and I don't want to bombard you too much with those kind of questions. What can I ask you, Steve? What can I ask you?
I know it's not happening until after the cruise anyway, which is happening it's like 3 weeks away now, the cruise. Yeah. So they can't happen during, well, it could, but it doesn't make sense too, because it's going to be challenging to know. I don't know what food's going to be like during that period of time anyway, like, and I can't weigh in or anything. So that's going to be it'll probably start soon after that, I'd imagine, but we'll have to see. I'm still sitting around, like my highest weigh-in's 193 pounds, which I think is like 87 kilos or something. So I'm not far from like given stage weights anywhere 170 to 175. But I don't even know if Cliff has a predicted stage weight for me. There we go. I'm talking too much about it.
That's all right. Let's take a short break then, and then we can come back having brainstormed, which we don't really. We're just saying like we're taking a break, pausing 5 seconds, and then we are back most of the time.
Do you not see the progress you would like? Are you sick of writing your own programs? Or perhaps you need some accountability in order to stick with a plan? Then it's time to start working with us. We at Revive Stronger offer a truly personalized coaching service. You'll get more than just an email with some macros or random cookie cutter program. With Revive Stronger, you will be the center of our attention. You will receive your own fully individualized training protocol alongside a customized nutritional strategy. We created the coaching around your needs, wants, personal preferences, and your own unique lifestyle. Every single week, we delve into your program in order to make appropriate adjustments so that we get the most out of your time and the best possible outcome. We help both female and male athletes to seriously change their body composition by adding more muscle mass and decreasing fat tissue. No matter if you're a competitive bodybuilder or just want to look better, if you need help with your progress and taking your physique to the next level, our coaching is for you. It's time to make a change. Sign up today and let's revive stronger.
So here we are, back again. A brainstorm for a lot of what to talk about. Steve, is there anything that you have changed recently in terms of your training? Any kind of observations or so? I can every now and then see things that you're doing that you've now started doing, for example, with kind of lateral raise variations and all that kind of stuff. And we also recently had Cass on the podcast that is then coming out in a couple of weeks from now. Any kind of new observations for you?
Yeah, so the only thing that I changed recently was the integrated partials, which I don't know if I'm doing exactly how Kassem would prescribe it, but I think there's no one way of doing this because it's not like it's something that's been studied by any means. The whole, I would say, premise behind an integrated partial, or I think John Meadows would call these like 1.5 reps. I think that's what he called it. And Charles Poliquin was also kind of famous for doing these. I think that's where Kassem maybe picked up from. I think he mentioned that on the podcast. But essentially the idea is to expose yourself to the lengthened position more than you otherwise would doing full ROM or even like lengthened partials. But for me, I've only incorporated it on, I think my behind body lateral raises, or it might be cross body. I can't remember which one it is actually. But I'm doing it on those just because I've been running that movement I've just been running it for like a year. I don't know. I've really been doing it for so long. And I was just like, I just want some variation in this movement pattern. And I was like, what can I do? I could try some integrated partials on it. And it's okay. I don't love them on that.
So what does it look like, Steve? Is it, because you said 1.5 reps, you're doing one total rep and then you are doing another half rep. And then once again, you're doing 1 rep, 1/2 rep.
So the way I'm doing it is I kind of come out for like a pulse, which is probably like a 1/4 rep. And then I come back and I do like half a rep. So I come to shoulder height is my like length and partial. And so the integrated part of that partial is like a half between there. So I just like come out slightly, back, up again. So it is like a to shoulder height rep, and then like, or rather 1/4 range of motion, half range of motion, 1/4 range of motion, half range of motion, 1/4 range of motion, half range of motion. That's at least how I'm doing it there. And another way more people would be familiar with is like you were mentioning, you could do it like on the leg press, do like one whole rep, come down, then do like a 50% range of motion where you just kind of like push up, I don't know, to a 90-degree bend in the knee, come back down, full rep, back down, partial, full rep, partial, full rep. And again, it's just to try and spend more time in that partial range of motion. So I was always, when I initially had seen these, I was like, why would you do partial and full ROM? If partials are better, why don't you just do partials? But having done, and I don't know if you've tried any of these, Pascal, where it's partials for like leg press or Smith squats or hack squats, they're brutal. And you just, because it's basically constant tension because there's no easy part of that range of motion and you're always having to like brace and breathe and they become a bit uncomfortable. They're just gnarly. And I don't know how to describe them, but they're hard to control. I don't know. It's like a wild animal and you're just like, fuck the whole time. Like, God, I can't really manage this. Like, how am I meant to like use any sort of RAR or anything like this? It just feels like you're just constantly close to failing. So having that kind of full rep there, I could see as an opportunity to brace, kind of get a bit of respite and then come into it again. So I could see if lengthen partials are theoretically better than full ROM on, say, a leg press, but the lengthen partials practically don't work very well. Maybe this is a sweet spot middle ground where it's like you get all the benefits of partials and you get the benefits of full ROM. And maybe it's this slightly superior movement on paper. We don't know, but I understood where Pascal, where Kassem was coming from.
Okay, I haven't given it a try at all, so this is just
They're
where that
nasty, man.
Okay, because I have, of course, a lot of questions. They are mostly coming from a skeptical background of like, okay, why wouldn't you do, and you asked that question yourself already, why wouldn't you do then all of the reps like this? Or then the question would be, why wouldn't you do full range of motion first and then second half maybe of this set with partials? Or maybe the other way around, right? Why does it have to be like 1.5 all the time? Wouldn't this throw things off? I don't know. I just, lots of questions that are popping into my mind then. Whether this just overcomplicates things maybe even on...
I think for some people it could. You have to think a bit more when you're doing it that way. But once you do it, it kind of becomes natural to some extent. But you have to remind yourself that you aren't just going to the same range of motion every time. I think it probably has the most practical utility in movements where you couldn't go full ROM into partials because you're going to fail in a lengthened position anyway. So I don't think... Oh, wait, did that make sense? So yeah, if you do full ROM lat pull down and then you let yourself go into partials, you're probably going to get a bunch more partials. So you could go down to chest and then you could keep going until you're at eye line and you're going to get so many more reps by allowing yourself to have that range. But on like a leg press, if you fail in the bottom position, I mean, you're going to fail in the bottom position. So then you're done. Like you can't go from full ROM into partials because it's already hardest in that lengthened partial range of motion position anyway. So it might be more beneficial in those ones where it's already so hard in that lengthened position. But I just think the partial range of motion lifting is going to be most beneficial for movements like pulling, where it is easiest in the lengthened range where you're strongest. So if you make it a partial and make it purposely stay in that lengthened position where you're strongest, you can kind of pick a load that's going to allow you to use way more load, get more reps in that range, and probably take that muscle truly closer to failure.
It's interesting, for sure.
Yeah, it's basically the only... Well, actually, there is interesting stuff coming out because you haven't actually seen it, Lyle McDonald's video, right?
No.
On where he was basically reviewing the paper, which actually I have it up somewhere, but essentially it was kind of a critical view of the literature surrounding motion, volume and hypertrophy. Is there truly a dose response? And just kind of taking a critical view of some of the papers that have come out and the conclusions that have been made. Things like, hey, is edema and swelling impacting the muscle thickness measurements that people are getting, and that's why it looks like more volume is creating more growth, because there is this associated thing. And obviously I've had Brad Schoenfeld on and he doesn't think it does, and many others also feel that way, but then some other people within the field do think that it is. And it's been Holly and Sam Buckner. They've kind of spearheaded this paper, which Lyle McDonald then reviewed and did his typical Lyle McDonald entertainment with it, where he kind of takes shots at Brad, which is always unfortunate because I have a lot of time for Brad. And yeah, that's the thing that I think is probably the hottest news on the press. And I've got 2 people booked in for a kind of debate discussion, and it's just to see if the other people can make that time, and then that will go ahead shortly and we can have, I think, a fruitful discussion. Because I think even if the counterpoints that they're making surrounding this aren't something that the majority of the experts believe are a problem, like the measurements being taken 48 hours is enough time, I think it's good that it's just highlighted that, because I think some people are still skeptical. So even if it's just brought it more to the forefront so that we can be even more sure that it's not, I think it's a positive thing, probably. Yeah. No. It's something that I don't know which podcast recording it was, whether it was the last one with Dr. Pack, who has come on to the podcast, and that will come out in a couple of days or weeks from now, kind of in February. No, it was probably with Dr. Eduardo,
who did
Yes.
the study, the 52-week study, where he even said like, okay, the caveats to training studies and how to basically interpret them and what the takeaways are. And I think that many people, they are so caught up in the practical applications and immediately come to the conclusion that the studies are kind of the same as practical application. And this is where then the misinterpretation comes from. And I think this often causes some kind of tension amongst kind of communities, because people are coming from different backgrounds in the way that they are interpreting things, in the way that they are discussing things. Right? Some people take it from a practical application perspective. Some people take it from a truly scientific perspective. And they are clashing because they are not talking about basically the same thing.
Yeah, I think you see this when we have had like quote unquote debates on the channel, and people end up agreeing much more than disagreeing. And that's why I enjoy bringing people on who maybe wouldn't have discussed things anyway, and having that actual chat allows them to find more common ground than otherwise. And when people are disagreeing on some of these things, they're like minor details that ultimately don't really make a huge bit of like difference to things. It's not like they're disagreeing on big rocks like, hey, a calorie deficit is required to like for long-term fat loss or something, you know. They're disagreeing on really minute things like, I don't know, I can't think of an example right now, but is a certain number of sets slightly more optimal than a certain other number of sets, like small variances on things, little details. I would say this, like, hey, Menno Henselmans would say maintenance phases are a waste of time. But someone like maybe Dr. Mike would say, hey, if you maintain, maybe you can resensitize the training volume and see a potentiation effect from that. It's like the people are kind of in those sort of minds. Actually, I said this with PAC, where you'll have people, I don't know if you've tried this, I imagine you have, with the leg curl, the seated leg curl, like leaning over it and getting more of, feeling like you're getting more of a stretch on the hamstring, more lengthened position, maybe more hypertrophic, or sitting back and pushing into the seat. And again, you have people within our space disagreeing on this. It's like, we don't actually have a paper that has investigated this. Just people have their rationale based off their own experience or their knowledge base. It's these things that we don't have black and white answers for. And that's where I think people need to be careful with the language they use and talking probabilities versus like blanket statements.
100%. No, absolutely. And then also often it is forgotten from what it is that your own goals are, what your own biases are when then going into a discussion like this. And often these discussions don't start on a common premise. It's like, okay, this is what we're talking about. This is my claim, and let's discuss this. But you never really take the time to listen to what the other person has to say and where they are coming from. Most people go into a discussion just wanting to state their opinion and their perspective on things. And that's not fruitful at all.
Yeah, when someone's not open to hearing you out, you know it's a problem.
Yeah, and not just hearing, like the words that you're saying, but really trying to understand the message behind those words. And you see it so often, even in just normal conversations that people have. Very few people really do listen. And that's why it's so often so appreciated when someone truly listens to what it is that you have to say, instead of just listening so that they can answer, so that they can reply with something that they wanted to actually talk about.
I can think of a direct example of this recently, where I've been speaking about technique and how I've been a little bit less precious about pristine, perfect technique. And some people have just kind of strawmanned me and assume that when I say that, that means I'm a proponent of bad, sloppy form. It's like, no, you've like swung the pendulum all the way to the other side. I'm just like, I think if you constantly worry about, I have perfect, pristine technique, everything has to look completely textbook, I think that can hold people back. I think that should kind of be the thing that you navigate towards. But if you're slightly away from that as you approach failure, it's still safe. The target muscle's under, being biased the most, all of those sort of factors are still in place. From the outside in, you'd look at it and be like, hey, that's not perfect, pristine technique, but still looks really good and productive, and it feels productive to that individual. That's kind of what I'm saying is I think that could actually help people progress more than having this hyper focused on like the perfect form. But people just think I'm saying, oh, Steve's an advocate of, like, I don't know, cheat reps or something. I'm like, well, maybe in some cases cheat reps could be beneficial. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it also has to do, and this goes down a completely different avenue and a rabbit hole now, and that is, I think that many people, and this is, it's me, myself included, of course, in certain situations, are poor in communication or communicative skills in general. So what I mean by that is they aren't really great at discussing things, talking about things, sitting down, listening to the other person, what they really have to say, and then replying to what it is that they have to say. And I think it's not getting any kind of better, because our lives revolve more and more around in the digital realm, where then true conversations never really do happen. It's just like a glimpse, and the other person always has time actually to reply to just like a short excerpt of what actually has been discussed. Because who takes the time to really write an article just to let the other person know, and who really takes the time to read through the article, getting back to him, saying like, okay, is this what you meant, blah, 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 blah. So because it happens on a different realm, the communication nowadays, it doesn't really allow to develop those proper communicative skills that you need to have basically in real life. And it's getting shorter and shorter. More strawmen are being created. People don't really learn anymore that well to communicate. And at least that's my perception. And I'm also here, once again, very biased. It is at least what I perceive, that is not representative of what's going on in the entire world, but more so in my small circle, that due to the internet, probably there's a huge contributing factor to it. People are getting very much poorer and poorer in their communicative skills.
I would agree.
Communicative skills. That's what it is, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. But I would agree, because there has been times, at least, I've tried to converse or considered kind of conversing with someone via like an Instagram message, or normally it's through comments. And I'm just like, I'm not going to be able to properly get my message across via these comments here. I need to be talking to you in person and discussing back and forth. It's just going to it's going to be too long-winded. It's not going to be fruitful going through these messages. But the other thing I've learned to do is give people a little bit of grace. So where I see something maybe from someone that triggers me a little bit, I try and just like be like, hey, I don't know the context of why they're talking about this. Like, they might have their reasons for it, especially if it's someone who I respect and I think they are knowledgeable and they maybe get results. I try and give them a bit of grace and don't just judge them immediately for that comment. But man, it's so easy to, especially like we have long form videos like this and conversations, but you could take a 30-second segment and that's all someone could see, and they then don't have the context at all of what that discussion has come from, and now suddenly they've judged you for that and they have pictured you in a certain way, and now they're telling everyone about it. Yeah, it's a weird time actually when you really think about it. I was thinking about this with Charlotte the other day. I was like, imagine if we didn't have the TV and, don't know, digital, like our phones. What would we do right now? Like, would we just go and walk Ada all the time, teach her loads of tricks? Like, what would we do?
I mean, you can always romanticize. You can always romanticize how it was in the past. You know, like the philosophers, like 2,000 years ago, and they are still kind of their principles and their thoughts that they've written down are still around and still relevant nowadays. Did that happen only because they had so much time? I would very much assume so. Because whenever you are bombarded with impressions throughout the entire day, you don't have the time to actually dissect and digest that information and make something out of it. Steve, when has been the last time that you really sat down and just sit there with your thoughts? And I'm guilty of that myself.
Every time I go to the toilet. No, I actually look at my phone probably.
That's the thing. That's the
maybe
thing.
The only time I ever give, and I do this on purpose, is in the morning when I take Ada out for like a 20-minute walk. I definitely don't allow myself to have my phone in, look at it for the first half of the walk. And if I can, this sounds so stupid, but I might set it up as like the whole walk. I might just go out for the whole walk, no phone. And then that's when I exactly as you said, I get to think through my thoughts. Sometimes it happens to me when I'm lying in bed and I'm like, fuck, this is a bad time to have this happen, because then I can't get to sleep.
Most creative thoughts are stemming from a fact when you have the mental capacity of thinking things through and coming up with creative ideas. 99% of the time, it doesn't happen when you are watching things, when you're listening to podcasts, when you're reading things. This is not the time, right? And we are living, of course, in a society where it's like you are constantly bombarded. And once again, I am absolutely guilty of that myself. I have a very hard time nowadays going out on a walk and not having a podcast on my ears, which is awful. Or when you're even going to the toilet, you're taking your phone with you, and then you're taking a shit, not even concentrating on the shit. You're concentrating on scrolling through Instagram, which is basically kind of the same thing. You get my drift. But that's the problem, you know? And if we never really take the time to then really sit down, think about things, I think it's a scary thing. But this is also, could very well be the boomer take in me, because we know what it's like to grow up without having access to the internet or a phone with us. And when I was younger, with my friends around, like very much younger, we were playing outside the entire day. And I'm not saying that kids aren't doing this anymore, because they most certainly are, but we needed to become very creative. And of course, out of that creativity, sometimes we did a lot of shit, a lot of stupid shit, but that also grew us as a person. It developed our character. It bonded us as well. It created some experiences, some discoveries even sometimes. And if you're just constantly on your phone, for example, I can't see that this is happening. You're not having the mental capacity of really thinking. You're just kind of consuming without actually making something out of that information, etc., etc. So for me personally, also when it comes to my kids, I want that they are growing up, of course, with digital media, because I think having a computer and having also that access to the internet can be such a beautiful thing if you're taking proper advantage of it, right? We've talked about ChatGPT before the stream or the recording, and nowadays you can find everything that you're curious about, which is freaking fantastic. Back then, we didn't really have it. Even when you wanted to learn about a specific thing, a niche thing, the library didn't have it because it was just too niche. And maybe you didn't even discover it because it was outside of your world, outside of your bubble. And with the internet, of course, you can discover so many things, and you can get to know people who are in that realm and that community without having them close or local to you, which is fantastic. But at the same time, it's a pile of garbage. And you need to dig for maybe a very long time to find absolutely amazing things there. So if you are like, I don't know, once again, it's kind of a pile of garbage, like meters high, kilometers wide, for example, and the chance of you finding a gem there is there, but you need to look for a very long time. And if you're unlucky, you can just be lost in that pile of garbage.
I think about this as like an example. Anyone listening to this podcast has found the gem that is the fitness industry, where it's good, fruitful information that you can use and apply. But you don't have to stray far from us to find, you go on Layne Norton's page, and he's taking shots at all these people who have millions of followers who are just spewing absolute crap. And you get lost in that realm and think they're your gurus. And maybe we're in the matrix. I don't know. Maybe we're in the falsehood of like actually our niche is the poor one. But I really don't think so.
I just want to say maybe we are the stupid ones, actually.
Yeah. I don't think so. I'm fairly confident on that. But I think about this when I go, and I don't know, it could be anything. But when I don't know, something I could think about is like skincare, or I don't know, anything along those lines. Like who are the people that actually are giving me good evidence-based information about this? Because there is so much just garbage out there. I don't know, like even like dentistry and tooth care, things like this. Yeah. I've looked into these things before because I've been like, oh, I want to take care of my teeth a bit better. I don't know who to listen to. I don't know what skincare routine I should be following. It's just like a complete minefield for me. And it could be like I was doing research on keyboards not that long ago. I ended up buying this one here. And I was like, I actually don't know who to listen to here. Who's actually credible?
I have to say, though, and I am so happy that I found the evidence-based community, to be honest, because it has taught me so much about my critical thinking skills.
Yes.
On being also skeptical, maybe bringing a little bit of doubt to the table at first, which is kind of a part of being skeptical, of course. Trying to come up with your own opinion at times. Not fully. Still, you can rely on what other people are finding, right? But don't take things for granted and always question things, you know? And not in the sense of like conspiracy theorists who are saying like, yeah, question the government, man. You know, I mean, fair to you, you know? But in the sense of like, okay, I don't know, this doesn't really make sense to me, so let's dig into that. And if you're then finding some evidence that actually supports that fact, you can change your tune and be like, oh, right, I was skeptical at first, but it seems actually quite plausible based on the amount of data, amount of evidence that I have in front of me. Whereas when you can even also go down the other route, right? And this is also where we are having then the podcast experts on, or the experts on the podcast, because not everyone is agreeing, as you rightly put so out yourself earlier in this recording. And that's totally fine, because especially the scientific data can sometimes be analyzed and interpreted differently. And this is coupled with real life observations and practical applications as well. And if you have other observations, you may come to different conclusions. And for me personally, it was a blessing that I've gotten into the evidence-based community, because it has taught me so much about especially critical thinking and how to approach certain topics. And that has carried over into every aspect of my life. And this is why I am more convinced and more confident now whenever I'm researching or studying a certain topic that I'm interested in. I have my bullshit detector is a little bit more well developed. I have the feeling, at least.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like I find this again when I discuss things with Charlotte, and she'll say something, and I'm like, is there actually evidence to support that statement, or are you just saying it? She hates it when I do that. But as an example, I've just forgotten his name. Podcaster Andrew Huberman. So, like, people will listen to him, and he's got very good credentials. He would be evidence-based in some instances, I would say, but he talks about very broad things. And I think he sometimes, definitely, he goes out of his scope of practice. And it's funny because I just found this person on Threads called Dr. Andrea Love, and she's just great. She was like basically just, he made some points about like vaccines and the flu and COVID and all of these like viral biology. And this is like her area of expertise. And she was just like point by point, this is why he's wrong. This is why he's wrong. This is why he's wrong. Like, be careful, guys. And it's tricky for people, I think, now, like with the internet, coming back to that. Like, you can't just go and think, oh, there's this Dr. Andrew Huberman. Man, he sounds so smart. Man, he speaks a lot of truth. And you just follow him as your guru. You have to be careful. Like, even like people in our space, like if they talk outside of, I don't know, fitness and health and bodybuilding and muscle growth and fat loss, I don't know, stop speaking their political views. You can't just be like, oh yeah, they know everything and that's the right way to do things. You've got to be like careful considering everyone's perspective there.
To be fair though, it has always been around. Like charismatic people who can convince people with their charm and their maybe also intellectual way of talking. Right? Yeah. It has always been around. However, the internet, of course, information spreads now globally much faster. Whereas back in the days, it was maybe like you had those people more locally. A person was more so known just in your area or so. And then we had the newspaper and maybe television, where it was also kind of still quite locally, right? A movie star out of Germany. Do you kind of know a lot of movie stars out of Germany? Probably not, you know? Whereas nowadays, when it comes to Andrew Huberman, for example, he could easily come out of Germany, be very well and eloquently speaking on English, and make it globally, And I think that people have always fallen for characters like these, but it's much easier to do it nowadays because those people are being pushed by the algorithm, and the information is just spreading much, much faster.
Yeah, I guess the take home here is just stay skeptical, and don't hop on don't hop on just new papers immediately and change everything you've been doing. Remember what's been working for you as an individual over many years.
Man, our small bubble and industry is not freed from this. Right? Since years, I've been saying okay, Mike, for example, because he is still being put on a pedestal, is making some claims where I'm just I don't really fully agree with this. And it's totally all right. I know that Mike doesn't really take it the wrong way when I say this. It's not meant in a personal attacking manner or so. It's just my interpretation of certain data points and my observation of maybe also just coming from personal experience or so is different. We have also grown up in different countries. So, of course, my perception is biased and also shaped differently than someone else. But I also think that especially our industry has put someone like Mike in the past years on a pedestal of no matter what it is that he's saying, it can't be questioned. It can't be wrong. And I even know that it is something that he doesn't even want. He doesn't want to be put in that position either. No. But people make it.
Yeah, I agree with you because and I think this comes back to Andrew Huberman. It's easier to have someone who's your go-to for everything, and they just are your guru, and you can feel comfortable and confident in everything that they say and do. But it's a problem, especially when they don't talk in probabilities and they start, living that guru. They're famous now. It's hard for their head not to get big and inflated at that point. And I'm sure for Mike, he's had to catch himself maybe at times where he's felt like he needs to fill those boots. I can't speak for him, but I wouldn't be surprised if that happens. But yeah, you have to humble yourself at times, I guess. And I've been there too, where I have, for example, with Mike, I've been like, man, how could I question such a person? He's got a PhD. He's so much more jacked than me, way more experienced than me at the time. How could I doubt that person? As I've grown and developed and matured as, an evidence-based practitioner, a coach, a trainee, I've developed my own thoughts and philosophies where I can be like, hey, actually, when he talks about this, there isn't a ton of a body of literature that's more of his opinion and viewpoint based off his experience, but I can have a different opinion to that. I think you were ahead of me on that curve for sure, but I think it's just important for people listening to be able to do that to anyone in this space, and certainly us included.
No, absolutely. But at the same time, also to be fair, that it was a development for you, or it evolved to where it is that you're at right now. I think it's totally all right to rely on then the expertise of someone else if you have little experience, personal experience, and little knowledge around a certain topic. And the more you are then in that field and the more you are then learning about certain subjects, the more you can then start to rely on your own expertise and start to question then the other person, for example.
Yeah, and I think that's something we've spoken about before, where I think it's also important, where we've said, everyone who comes on the Revive Stronger podcast, we view as credible for them, based off what we know and have seen, we view them as credible, someone who's worth listening to, has a perspective worth sharing. But it doesn't mean we agree with everything they say outright. There's definitely people we've had on who have said things where I'm like, I don't agree with that, or I have a different perspective, whatever it is. And I think it's also important to have people like that, because you might grow and take lessons and tools away from them. An example of that I bring up regularly is Kasim. When I first saw his stuff over at N1, it rubbed me up the wrong way. I wasn't into it. But as I've seen him grow and develop and also matured myself and experimented, I've taken some gold away from him as a person. I've come to really respect and enjoy his work. And I think it's important to keep people like that in your scope. Not someone like, Paul Salandino, whatever he is, who says plants are killing you. I don't know if keeping an eye and a pulse on those sort of people is productive, because they probably just piss you off.
There's definitely a certain threshold that you don't need to actually step over.
Whereas people who are clearly just touting complete crap. Again, Joe Rogan is someone who comes to mind, where he just, I don't know why he just goes into these areas that are just like, man, his bullshit detector doesn't seem strong enough.
Yeah.
And he has such a big platform.
There's this funny meme about where he says like something about hamburgers and beef. Have you seen that?
No.
So, it's something along the lines of like, why do they call hamburgers? No, what was it again?
It's not ham, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's beef.
It goes down that rabbit hole, and then it's also, it has not been a recording, but it's just like a parody on how he is, you know. And then it's like, his assistant, he says like, oh no, Google that real quickly, and then he comes back of like, yeah, no, that is actually beef, and he's like, all right, but what if XYZ? Such a it hits the nail on the head of what it's like.
Oh dear. He's obviously done a lot right, and I think it's fine that. Again, I think as a consumer, that's where you have to come in and be like, hey, I'm going to listen to these things. They can be entertaining. Maybe they can be informative, but I don't just take every word what that is said for gold. It's a bit different when you have the Revive Stronger podcast interviewing a researcher talking you through a paper versus someone's
Steve,
ideas.
Yeah, I have it. I just Googled that. And this is the last part of now the podcast, and then we can end it. So Joe Rogan says, hamburgers are good, but I'm trying to eat less pork. The guest says, hamburgers are made with beef. Joe Rogan says, ham is from pork. It says ham in hamburger. The guest, it is actually beef. Joe Rogan says, that's not what I've heard. Jamie, look that up. Jamie, it's beef. The guest, it's beef. Joe says, okay, but can we really trust hamburger makers and butchers and grocery stores when the word ham is in hamburger and ham means pork? And then Joe Rogan fans, this is why I like him. He is good at thinking. You know, this really hits the nail on the head.
Oh my God. Now I want to know why it's called a hamburger. Yeah. You do get it called a beef burger sometimes, but that, oh my God, that meme's absolutely hilarious. That's gold. That hits a nail on the head.
Yeah, it does, right? But yeah, anyway, guys, thanks as always for listening. Really do hope that you are still enjoying the Improving Season podcast here in 2024. As always, leave a like, leave a subscribe, and also feel free to comment underneath below. No matter what it is, we always appreciate if you are then kind of commenting and interacting with us.
Thank you guys for listening. Catch you soon.
Cheers.
Losing weight fast while maintaining muscle mass. Sounds too good to be true, doesn't it? It isn't though. It's reality, and we know how to do it, and we will help you achieve this. The Minicut Movement is an 8-week fat loss program to make you lose a huge chunk of fat while maintaining muscle mass at the same time. We will support you from the beginning to the end so that you see the results you would like to and come out of it much stronger. You'll receive a fully automated spreadsheet that is based on your nutritional needs. You can choose between 6 different male and female training templates. Over 30 videos will guide you through each and every single step of the Minicut so that you're getting the most out of your journey and that you always know what to do. But the best thing is that you can start whenever you want. The Minicut Movement is open 24/7. So if you want to learn more or you're ready to sign up, hit the link in the description below. So let's revive stronger together.